Good morning. I guess afternoon. My name is Adam Kahn, and I'm the Rational Investor. This is Sunday, August 27th. I hope everybody's having a nice weekend. Um, Here to talk about a few things. I love watching my YouTubers, seeing who I agree with and who I don't agree with, and the things out there that people are talking about. So I'm going to talk about my usual housing because I love the housing market. It's kind of what I got into and enjoy as well. And I'm going to start with a question. Whoop, got to fly around. I hate those things. So, what's it going to take for the housing market to finally correct? I'll tell you my answer is nothing. Nothing. While everybody's sitting on the sideline continuing to be told rent and you're ranting and raving how you're going on telling everybody you love how they're honest and they're telling you the smart thing to do, and you continue to rent and put away further and further the idea of owning because it's just gotten more expensive. Well, I think you're going to continue to be a renter and it's going to stay that way a long time. I mean, you tell me what's going to change it. Higher interest rates might continue to slow the buyers down, but prices seem to be going up still, and the inventory is still super low. And I don't really see what changes that. As interest rates go higher, well, do you think builders are going to build more units or less units? When they're building things, they're borrowing money to do it. So if the interest rates are going higher, they're going to slow down what they build. They just aren't building the way they did in '03, '04, '05. On top of that, what's it going to take to get the current owners out of their properties? I mean, if you're somebody like me, you're pinned into your property. My interest rate is below 3. The equity of the past few years has gone up a good bit. uh, it's really hard for me to imagine what I would do to go back out there and search for a different home, even if I wanted to move, which fortunately we love our house, so we're not really looking to move. But if we had underbought and had something that we really wanted to upgrade to, eh, I don't know. To be fair to those not looking, it has gotten more expensive over the years. At the same time, so has everything else, and it's just the cost of where things have gone. In general, do you think in 2 or 3 years, and be honest about this, do you think things are going to be more expensive than they are today or less expensive? And I don't even mean the housing, just life, going to a restaurant, going to the supermarket. Do you think the slow increase of prices is here to stay, or do you think we're going to go into a deflationary period and you're going to see grocery prices come down, going to sporting events come down, and things just get less expensive? I'm of the mindset that inflation, and even if it's at a 2%, is kind of here to stay. I'm floored that if my wife and son and I wanted to go see a show or go to a football game or something like that for a one night event, we're probably looking at six, seven, $800. At the same time, if I try to picture 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, I don't see me having some new amazing opportunity that I can get those things for a couple $100 again. I just don't think that's realistic. And maybe I could get upset about it and fantasize that, oh, that's coming back. I don't think it is. So I don't see it being any different in housing. So when I'm watching all the guys on there talking about gloom and doom and pointing to good economic factors as to why they see housing dropping, I just don't see it that way. I think basic economics of supply and demand is the real issue. And we have a lack of supply and we still have demand. I can tell you from my job, there's plenty of people who want to buy. They're just waiting for it to get quote unquote more affordable as it continues to get less affordable. And I don't necessarily mean price. Rate is also less affordable. So I've seen prices in some areas here in Vegas come down a little bit, but I've also seen the rates go up where your monthly expense overall is going to be higher. I also see energy bills going up and water bills and everything else. And again, I don't really see that turning around anytime soon. So despite and totally ignoring the Fed, because I don't care where they raise rates to, I see that continuing. They might push it so far that they really cause an economic problem, But that's also where I kind of diverge from everybody else. I don't think their goal is to cause a collapse. And if their goal is not to cause a collapse, well, then things keep drifting higher. They don't reverse. If they cause a collapse, it might happen too quick, where if they pivot, they'll be behind the eight ball there too. But that's exactly the disconnect. I mean, you have the sales pitch of wait for lower rates. Well, if lower rates come anytime soon, I think you see pricing go straight up because plenty of people still want to buy, and the affordability will become less so, and you'll see the prices go up, and that'll offset any savings on your interest rate. So, this concept of just rent and wait makes no sense. I mean, for me, if I didn't own, I've always wanted to own. It's one of the drives that pushes me to save for down payment and own a house. I wouldn't be doing the math on my primary to think is renting a better value than owning, just because even if my rent were lower and the math doesn't make sense when I look at it as investment property, is the home I want to live in, if I want to paint the walls pink or not worry that my landlord sells the house or be in the position where I feel like I have to move because I'm at the whim of somebody else, I would rather own a place than rent it. It's not just simple economics. There's a lot more that goes into that decision than anything else. I mean, I have a wife and I have a son, and my son goes to school. And I want the security of the place we're in and not worrying about any of the other factors. That's just a matter of control of me wanting that security over whether it would make more sense to rent than own. And then let's bring it back to anybody who bought more than 2 years ago. Where are they going? What's going to push them to sell their property and move? Well, I think part of the reason rents are coming down is a lot of the people, if they're in the same position as me, is if they moved, boy, they're in a better spot to rent their place out than sell it and go buy something else. I mean, if my job were one that I had the risk of they transfer me or I'm pushed to go somewhere else, I don't know that I'd be looking to sell my property and buy somewhere else. If I were forced to rent, I'd probably rent my house out, use the profit from my rent to go look somewhere else in a rental. I just don't know. I don't see this gloom and doom. It's not something on the horizon that I see. You even have people pointing towards the credit card debt as this big, ominous, oh my God, it's more than ever. Well, duh. Let's talk about that for a minute. We've had some massive inflation. I'll agree with that. If I go to the supermarket, my average bill used to be $40 and now it's 70, and I charge that on my credit card. Wouldn't it make sense that there'd be higher credit card debt? I mean, it's just a silly disconnect of like, oh, things must be worse because the credit card debt is higher. And. Well, the credit card debt is higher because things cost more and people are charging that on the credit card. That doesn't mean they're getting into more problems. You know, I'd like to think the same amount of people as always tend to spend more than what they can afford, and the rest of the people don't. I mean, maybe they live check to check or whatever else, but they're charging what they can afford. Those things are just more expensive than they used to be. Hence, you have higher credit card debt. That doesn't mean there's some big collapse coming. That just means the debt on the credit cards are higher because the cost of things are higher. It's kind of a silly disconnect, and there's so many disconnects I see on some of this stuff. Even I've mentioned it in many of the videos that I do, the differences in the loans. I mean, more of the clients who seem to come in uh, seem to have better credit, more down payment, and in a better financial position than even when the houses were way cheaper. I mean, I think of the general client and where what was going on back then and where we are now. Despite the higher prices and the higher rates, I think people are pretty well qualified. So unless we have some big unemployment that forces them out of jobs where they really can't afford those payments, I, I think people are in an okay position that are buying these houses. So while so many people point to all of these negatives going on and get everybody riled up about this correction that's coming, and they continue to sit on the sidelines and rent and rent and rent because that's just the smarter decision. Well, they're putting off them buying a house further and further and making it less and less affordable over time. Not 2008. There's nothing that I see over the next few months or 6 months that's going to cause that. And a healthy dose of fear is what helps to keep the economies going. I mean, my God, I love the stock market. Nvidia crushed it. And I'm not a financial planner. I'm just an idiot. So really, don't follow my advice. But but my God, what a great opportunity! The company's growing. Forget this year that they grew well over 100%. Their estimates for next year to grow at a 50% increase year over year, but the stock on next year's earnings is around a 30 PE. If you want to figure out today's PE based on their current earnings, maybe it's around 50 or so. But Nvidia, that is way overpriced because we've watched it go from 80 to 500 and really don't factor where that value comes from and just see that it went up really fast and think, oh, it must be overpriced. Quite honestly, anywhere around 450 seems like a hell of a deal to me, and 500 seems like it's okay. As long as they do what they're on pace to for the next 12 to 18 months, it's hard for me not to see the value that they have in that stock. And God forbid they stay in the position of being the only one to offer this chip that seems like they're getting, 90% margins on, selling it to companies like Amazon and Google and Facebook that seem to be pretty flush with cash and able to afford these chips. They have more demand for this product than is out there, and they don't have anyone competing against them yet. It's possible in time somebody else comes up with something to compete, but I think there's good opportunities out there in a lot of things, and I just don't see where everybody seems to think some crash is coming. And to be perfectly honest, like I said, I'm kind of glad that everybody feels that way because that's what I think keeps the market reasonable and where you want to be. I mean, what I talk about to people, not a financial planner, intense. Don't miss that part. No, really, I'm not. Make your own decisions. I don't care what it is that you like. I mean, I like baseball cards and stuff. I buy some of that stuff, and I've watched it over the years do just fine. And while there was a great correction, I don't see it going back to where it was, which is kind of my point about the housing, food prices, tickets to sporting events, going out to dinner, so on and so on and so on. I get it's more expensive than what it was 3 years ago, but be realistic about the markets. I don't see it going back to where it was either. Maybe we have some small pullbacks here or there, but the only places I really see bargains are places that maybe people aren't like non-desirable places to live. Same thing with stocks. The only places I see bargains are non-desirable stocks that I wouldn't really want to own. On the flip side, the strong companies that seem to be making money and continuing to grow, well, maybe there's a bit of a premium in those companies because there's value in that. So take it all with a grain of salt. Do the best you can to make a living and put some money away. Like, that's my best advice on how to get rich. Continue to put away, continue to put away, have more in the savings than going out the door, and try not to run in debt. Not always so easy, but that's the best advice I can give. Anyway, have a great rest of your weekend. Make sure to give a thumbs up, like, subscribe, chime in, don't. Half the time I just do this to get my mind going on where I see things and remind myself that don't be scared of the economy. I just don't see there being some big hiccup along the way. Have a good one.